Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Meet the Experts, which is a web interview series that we do with business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, people who have a story, a product, or a service to talk about. And it helps us get to know them. It helps us grow our network, meet people, give them a chance to get some video content that they otherwise might not create. The whole premise of the show was to work with business owners because a lot of times, as a business owner, it doesn't mean we're a videographer or that we know how to, produce a good video. And sometimes we just don't want to pick up the phone. We feel silly doing that selfie video, but we know video content is where it's at. It's very important. We all need to be on video. Video is consumed at a higher rate than ever. And so that's what we strive to do. We strive to give you a free piece of video content where you get a chance to talk all about you, your business, your products, your services, and we just give it to you after the episode. We do have some other ways we can help, but if you want to learn how to be a guest on Meet the Experts in the future, stick around to the end of the episode. We will I'll talk to you about it and tell you exactly how you can be a future guest on Meet the Experts. This episode is brought to you by Journey Builder, which is an all-in-one marketing tool. It's basically 30 marketing tools replaced by one piece of software. It can help you with your customer management and all your follow-up and lead generation and everything in between. It's a fully powered CRM tool. Journey Builder, getjourneybuilder.com. And let's talk about today's guest. So my guest today is Dan Kopp, and he came to us recently through some of our efforts of reaching out. Dan does like all things leadership and compensation. He can help businesses with training and paying people the right amount that they need to be paid, and what else can you do from a compensation. He's going to talk all about that today. But I do want to mention that in 2022, Dan released his first book, The Power of Me Leadership, 9 leadership tenets for every leader. And in that book, he discusses the tenets that will help everyone become a better leader. So let's let Dan tell you all about it, and let's get him on screen. Hi, Dan. How the heck are you?
I am doing great, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Leadership and just entrepreneurship, and how do we pay people? How do we take care of our people, right? And how do we get better as leaders is always a fascinating topic for me as an entrepreneur, right? It's like, how do I get better at that? So it always speaks to me personally. So whenever I get to talk about it or learn a little bit more, I'm up for it. So I'm really excited to kind of hear more from you about that. So tell us a little bit more about Dan and some of the stuff you do.
Well, I am a CEO and founder of 2 companies, and after a stint in the Army and then public education, I'm now an entrepreneur. The 2 companies, one is a leadership company, which we're not here to talk about today, but it's called Leading Like a Buffalo. And I love what you said, take care of your people. That is the most important thing leaders and employers can do. Employers, you're leaders. Taking care of your people, if you do that correctly, everything else comes easier. So I have 2 companies. One's leadership. The other one is a compensation company, Dinamico, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And we help our clients create and easily manage compensation systems that make a difference. And we'll get more into what they actually do here in a moment.
Yeah, so let's go right into it. When you're talking about compensation plans, I would love to know, some of those services, of course, but who do they really help most? Is there a particular job role or a particular title? So maybe just talk about your services and who you're going after.
Sure. What we found is we can work with any size company, quite honestly, private, public, nonprofit. We can work with any size, but what comes with a larger company, I'm going to use large to be defined as 250 employees or more. They typically have a rather beefy HR department, and over time, they've created their own systems that may be convoluted or may be extreme management requirements, but they're theirs and they don't want to let them go, which is perfectly okay because we're not here to tell somebody they're wrong. We're just here to make your lives easier. So if you got something that's going well for you, rock it. But if you are small and medium size where you're just trying to figure out how to properly compensate your people and maybe consolidate the management or make management of your compensation systems easier, that's where we come in. We've got an online platform where our partner clients can create and easily manage compensation systems that are different from employee group to employee group, but they're going to be managed the same and they're going to have some of the same things embedded in them. So the compensation systems at the end of the day do four main things. They ensure compensation equity because it's black and white. You're going to pay people based on the things that are in your system. You're going to attract talent who fits them, assuming, of course, that you use them when you go to market. Hey, we've got a job opening. Here's what we find important. Here's what we want in our organization. And if you possess these skills, these abilities, these traits, please apply because you fit us. And more importantly, we're going to pay you for those things. So which gets to the third point, which is retaining great people, because how often right now, especially with the great resignation that's gone on, how often do we hear people leaving because they're not getting fairly compensated, not more money, but actually recognizing the work that they're doing. So our systems do that. And finally, we can help ensure satisfactory and exceptional performance if you are bold enough to put in some type of requirements for the job in your systems. So quiet quitting's out there. Well, that's because your average employee doesn't have any impetus to do a good job. As long as they're not in the 5% of employees, they're pretty much off the radar of the first line supervisor. Because let's face it, those first line supervisors don't have the bandwidth to address the bottom 50% of the people. They're making it at the bottom 5% or bottom 10. So if I'm an employee, as long as I'm not in the bottom 10%, I'm good. Well, if they work in a system that says, if you're at least satisfactory, this is the money you're going to get. And if you're exceptional, this is the money you're going to get. There's the impetus to do a better job.
That's so interesting to talk about that. It reminds me, there was an old cartoon. I don't know who to give credit to for the cartoon. I don't know who wrote it or who drew it, but one of the things you said about it is kind of one of our mantras internally. We don't have a big team at all, but it was the cartoon where two executives are talking to one another, and the one says to the other, "What if I train all my people and they leave?" And the other guy looks back at him and says, "What if you don't train them and they stay?" And it's kind of in line with what you're talking about. What if I take care of, or what if I, like, do these things and then they go get a better job? And it's like, well, if you don't do anything with them, they're going to stay and be miserable, or they're not going to go above and beyond, right?
Right. And in an ideal system, you've got a compensation system in which you've identified what an exemplary employee looks like in this job category. And if you've got people meeting those criteria, pay them for them.
Right.
And it's not about being $1,000 a year above market. It's about recognizing the greatness that you have in your employees. It's as simple as that. If you've got a longevity-based system, you are going to lose in today's employment market. Your turnover is probably at a 20% rate. Pre-pandemic, we were at roughly 10, give or take, depending on the industry. Now people are at 20 to 30%. So if you're not compensating your people appropriately, you're going to stay at that 20%.
And when you say longevity, what you mean is like just the annual, you've been here another year, here's another 0.5% or 2% or something like that, right?
Yeah. If that's the only thing you're doing, I guarantee you're paying people who aren't worthy of that raise, and you're underpaying people who are killing it and performing at a high level. The bad news is you're going to keep the people you're overpaying, and you're going to lose the people you're underpaying.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's, I mean, so many businesses do that longevity model. It's like, oh, you've been here another year, here's a cookie, and yeah, I could totally see how silent quitting comes into play there. That's crazy. Yeah, not crazy. It's not crazy. It's just something you don't think about. I think I love the approach you take. I think it's brilliant, in the fact that, if you come here, you show up every day, you work hard, and you do the things, you're gonna get more. And I know this is kind of, we didn't discuss, but you got my gears turning now. So one of the things I've seen with this longevity model has been that at this particular position, there's a ceiling, there's a cap. Like, we can't pay you anymore because the budget won't allow us to pay you anymore. Is it different now with this performance-based? Is there a cap on that? Or if somebody continues to do a good job, can they still be rewarded even more?
Conceptually, our system is capped. However, to get to the top, it isn't be here 15 years, and then when you're
Right.
here 15 years, you can coast, because every employer in the country that's on a longevity-based system that's capped, they've got people, for lack of a better term, who are coasting once they hit the top. It happens in education, it happens in private business, it happens everywhere. People start coasting because there's no impetus to do anything else. So take that thought out of your head and put in, like, all right, here's the things we want you to do, one of which is satisfactory performance. So even if you're at the top and longevity is part of your system, which makes sense because you want loyalty, you want people to stay, but there's also a component that says you have to at least be satisfactory. So begrudgingly, those people who are now at the top are actually going to have to continue to perform.
Right.
And if you throw the carrot in there, plus if you're exceptional, we're going to give you more money. So it's capped in the essence that if you do everything on the system, it's capped, but it's not going to be easily done by merely being here 15 years or existing for another quarter or another a year, whatever. I've got to be exceptional at my job on a continuous basis, and I'm going to be capped.
It's a beautiful system. That's awesome. I love it. I'm so glad. Now, see, there's the nugget I'm going to be walking away from this with, saying, oh, God, I love that Dan was on the show and taught me that principle. So speaking of, you just taught me a principle I think would generate a win in a lot of businesses. I'm sure to stay in business for a long time, people have to say good things about you, because if all you were getting was bad things, you're going to go out of business. Has anyone, a client or anything, obviously you don't have to give names, but has anyone ever said to you something in the form of a testimony or some win that you got for them or that you helped them with, that, like, when you think about what you do on a daily basis, you go to that in your mind all the time?
Absolutely. We have a nonprofit organization who's a client. They've been one of our first clients and our longest tenured client. And when they started with us, they had equity in their organization of $5 million, which is pretty beefy for a nonprofit. Fast forward 2 years, they built that to $19 million, and their executive director attributes 100% of their success and growth to using our system. Because what they discovered once they started articulating the things that were important, they had long tenured employees who did not fit where the organization was or where it was going. So those people opted out. I was literally in the room when they built the system correctly, and one of their long tenured employees was part of the development process, because the person in the position's got a point of view, the first line supervisor has a point of view, and maybe an executive in a role has a point of view of what makes excellence in this position. So they built it correctly. When we were done, the employee said, you know what? Great process. Love the fact that I was involved. I just realized I don't fit this organization, because that's not me, what we just articulated. It is the organization, but it's not. I'm going to go elsewhere. You now go hire people who fit you. So they've done that over 2+ years, and everybody in that organization, and using the executive director's words, now know where their role fits in the bigger picture and where the organization's going, because he meets with every new employee and says, here's how you get paid. Do these things. This is what's important to us. And they're all going in the same direction. And they built equity up to $19 million in 2 years.
That's incredible. Well, kudos on that. And that's great results to have as a case study. And oh my gosh, that's a big one. I mean, just to go from 5 to 19 million, like, I mean, a lot of business owners would be happy to go from like 5 to 6 figures or 6 to 7 figures, right? So when you're talking about going from 7 to 8, wow. All right, little bit changing gears. I want to talk about you a little bit, Dan. Now, obviously you've, Dinamico, and then you got the leadership stuff. We call it earned it, learned it, improved your authority. Tell us from an educational standpoint, give us some of the highlights that have gotten you to this place in life.
Sure. Leadership wise, I'm a bit older now, but I've been in a leadership position when I was in the Army at age 20. Haven't looked back. It's been 30+ years and I've been in a leadership position. So there's my credibility through that lens. And then when I was in public education, I was in an administrative role for 15 years and did a lot of HR stuff. And my business partner in Dinamico is a 30-year veteran chief financial officer. So the two of us over an 8-year period created Dinamico and the algorithms that are embedded in our dashboard. And he gets things through a business official lens. So if a business official or CFO wants the tool to do something, odds are it does, because that's how my partner thinks.
Mm.
And then I'm more of a big picture guy, like, hey, this is what we want to do. Tag, you're it. Make it come to life. And that's what has made come to life. So we've got 40 plus years of experience in HR and the business world and leadership, another 10 in leadership on top of it, that we've been doing this for a long time. And I realize I just do a lot of things. It seems like I do a lot of things without really thinking about it. But I realized about a year and a half ago, my role in life is to help other leaders. And that's what I can do in both companies, whether I'm doing a keynote and organizational training through Leading Like a Buffalo, or I'm working with the C-suite executives to implement their new compensation systems. I'm helping them at the end of the day. That is my mission in life. My legacy is the impact those I've helped have on their organizations and their people. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who Dan and Dinamico are. But if the leaders I've helped through either Dinamico or Leading Like a Buffalo have a positive impact on their people and their organization, that's my legacy.
That's a perfect tie-in to the next question. Before I get to the next question, I wanted to kind of add in that after, almost 70 episodes of Meet the Experts, I found that when I talk to the true entrepreneurs, half have, college degrees, half don't, right? And what I've realized is we place such a weight on getting a piece of paper, and we overlook in society life experience and achievements that are real world, right? So do you get this piece of paper that says that a book could tell you some theoretical stuff, or do we actually go out there and live it and do it and achieve it? And I find that the successful entrepreneurs, the ones cut from the cloth that I feel like I'm cut from, are like, I went out there and I figured it out in life. I learned it. I taught myself, or I worked it, and it can't, I got it through that. You had it through the military, and then life experience. And I find that is the theme. My daughter, the other day, she started second grade. And one of the questions that was on this thing that we took a picture of, first day of second grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, a business owner like my daddy. And I was like, I love it. Good. That's going to save us like $300,000 in college tuition, because I can get her into business whenever she wants, and it does. But it goes to show that, a lot of successful people, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with education, college degrees, any of that, but I think a lot of us we're just lifelong learners, and we're gonna get it, figure it out, and then give it back. We're gonna give it away. And that's the legacy thing, right?
Absolutely. And at times those degrees, those certifications open doors.
Sure.
But I've hired countless people over the years. And when I've heard candidates say to me, well, I learned and I would probably do this, versus, well, I have done something like that in the past and this is how I would do it. That's who I'm hiring 100% of the time, versus someone who lives in theory. Theory's great, don't get me wrong, but right, until you've applied it and found your own way in life, which gets back to our exact approach in leadership.
Yep.
I've never been able to read a leadership book or go to a keynote, etc., and say, oh, I know how to do leadership now. Let me follow his or her approach, because I'm not that person. Right. So we work with our clients to have them harness who they are as a human being, why they are that person, and then we expose them to some approaches to leadership that they can implement in a manner that's comfortable for them in the context in which they're working. Not, here's Dan's 12 steps to leadership and implement them 1 through 12. It doesn't work. But so often that's what we encounter. And that's exactly why we do what we do. We embrace the individual, and whoever you are, you can lead. You've got the skills and the values to do it. We just need to get that out of you and help you lead with confidence.
I love that. And you mentioned before with that, your legacy. So look, personally, professionally, I love this question. This is my favorite question that I ask every single guest. What is Dan truly thankful for?
I am really thankful for my family. I know that's very cliche, but I've got a beautiful, loving wife of 34 years of bliss and 2 outstanding kids who are, one's still in college and one's making her way in the professional world right now. And we live in a great place, and I'm happy. I keep reminding myself of that, because I have to live in the moment. Not if I do this one thing, what's it going to lead to? And live in the moment and just appreciate the day to day. My wife and I love being with her. We're talking about going away over a weekend for a couple weeks. She said, "Where?" I said, "As long as I'm with you, I don't care where we go. It's all good. Let's just go."
Yeah. Yeah. Look, a handful of guests have told me family, and to me, that's kind of my why, and a lot of what I'm thankful for as well. And I love, my wife is my travel buddy. Like, that's what we do. We travel. So I love that answer, and thank you for opening up about that. With that. So, Dan, this has been fun, and I've learned a lot in a very short period of time, which is why I love doing these things. We got one question left, and this is the FAQ question, right? In your line of work, in what you're doing, when you're talking to these potential clients, I'm sure there's probably a handful, but is there one frequently asked question? Is there one thing that you find yourself answering all the time? And if we got it out on video right now, could we turn this into a 24/7, 365 answer to that question on your website or something? Give me that big question that people are always asking you, and how do you answer it?
This is huge, and I get this from almost everybody to whom I speak. How do I go from where I am to a system that is not longevity based? Because most employers are on some type of longevity based system, or they've added a few bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, it's still a longevity based system. So how do I go from a longevity based system to something that addresses other things when we've all grown up in this longevity based system, and that's what we're all used to, and we all are afraid of change? So here's my answer. Get your people in a room, auditorium, a conference room, everybody in a room, and say, all right, people, we are going to start examining the way we compensate you, because it's about time we start recognizing the greatness that's in this room. Who's not going to want to hear that?
Right.
Except for the coasters, the good old boys sitting in the back, right? They're not going to want to hear it. Some of them might be thinking, hey, boss lady, boss man, what about me? I don't do anything great. What are you going to do with that? Well, we're not. That's what the system currently is. We're speaking to them in regard to what we're currently doing. You're at 15 years, you're coasting, and you're making bank. Nobody, and the people who are killing it aren't.
Right.
Get off that. Start addressing the greatness, and those people who were at one time great that allowed them to get to 15 years and not lose their employment, they're going to start performing, or they'll go elsewhere where they can coast. And then you bring in people. So there's the key. Be it upfront, we're going to embrace your voice to help us figure out how to properly compensate you for the great things we know you are doing. Period. It's that simple.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that's perfect. And I could imagine it's kind of like is this going to work for me? How's this going to work for me? How do I do it? And you just nailed it with, and I can respect an employer that would say, hey, look, if you're doing a great job, we want to compensate you more. We've just been in this way for a while. Let's have that. And I love that approach. Just get them all in a room and talk about it. So fantastic. Dan, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to give it another second. So if you want to get a hold of Dan, down there at the scrolling ticker at the bottom there, Dan at Dinamico Systems. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to say it, but I just said Dinamico Systems, to create and easily manage compensation systems that make a difference. Email Dan. Dan, thank you so much for being a guest today, and I really, really had fun. And stick around backstage. I got something to say after we're done, but thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right. That was another fun episode. Dan he just energy. I feel like Dan and I would hang out outside of doing Meet the Experts. Just a good guy. Enjoy talking to him, and a lot of what he was talking about is some of the things I think about as a business owner all the time. Now, I have a very small team, but I'm always thinking, I have contractors and I have an employee, and I'm like, all right, how am I fair with compensation? Is there some other way to do it? And it's always nice. It's always nice to grow your network a little bit more and say, well, I have a resource I could at least ask, and maybe there will come a time where that'll be a good fit. But if you know a business owner that is paying on longevity plans, I would say get a hold of Dan and see if he can come in and help make your employees happier. Anyway, I promised at the beginning of the episode if you want to be a future guest on Meet the Experts, that I would tell you how. And at the bottom of the screen right here now, all you need to do is go to www.meettheexpertspodcast.com. That's www.meettheexperts with an S podcast.com, and fill out the form, read all about what you get. Like I said, it's a free service. If you want some help with doing something with the videos once it's done, whether that's a press release, whether that's video editing to give you some social media sound bites, or uploading it to the podcast platforms, we do have packages for that available, but no obligation. Just come be a guest. We've done almost 70 of these now, and if you have something to say and something to share and you need help getting it out on video, hey, we're here for you. So until our next episode, we've got a whole bunch lined up, so there's lots more Meet the Experts to come in the next couple of weeks and months. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again very